Hello, welcome. It's Christopher Taylor with Sovereign Harmony here up on the hill. Sunday morning, January 11th. We're going to do the astrology for the 11th through the 17th here, early 2026. And just after sunrise here, nice morning. We're going to have a good week here around the San Diego area for weather. But in terms of the astrological weather, we are coming off of this triple conjunction, Venus, Mars, Sun in Capricorn. That was pretty much last week's theme, which has a lot to do with, on a personal level, coming into a new solid foundation for what's coming here in 2026 with the movement of the outer planets into their new signs for good. Okay. And as this moves, has moved through the weekend, as we speak right now and heading into the early part of the week, first, all three of those planets forming an opposition to Jupiter in Cancer. So that Jupiter has been in Cancer for a while, since the spring or so, and it's been all about growth and vulnerability and seeing the past in new ways that allow us to expand our capacity and perception of what things actually happen, how things actually happen and what they actually meant for us. Okay. And so this Jupiter is kind of causing this new foundation to expand to the point of cracking. Think of it like a snail that's outgrowing its shell. Okay. And that cracking, we just set this foundation. Now it wants to crack. The idea is that we're stating where we want to be, how we want to hold ourselves when we pull all of ourselves into this experience. And Jupiter's saying, well, we need to be a little bit larger for what you want. And so that cracking causes vulnerability. And so the next phase, which is over the next few days, all three of those planetary bodies, Venus, Sun, Mars, are all squaring Chiron in Aries. Okay, so this is some real vulnerabilities in terms of self-acceptance. Okay, so we can be tempted, things can happen early this week that tempt us to self-abandon. A lot of times self-abandonment is a survival mechanism where we say, okay, the world wants me to be this, I am this, but it doesn't want me as I am, so what do I need to be? Or how do I hide myself? Okay, and so there's some things that come up early this week that really challenge us to move through that. Okay, and that's the same thing that happens, when a caterpillar is turning into a butterfly, that vulnerability phase, that goo phase, that chrysalis, it's tough to trust that process. And that's what we're being asked to do, is to trust that process right now. Okay. And like I mentioned before in these, back in September, those eclipses that we had was really the end of the caterpillar phase. And the eclipses that are coming up here soon, actually, in late February, early March, represent stepping into the butterfly phase. So we really are at almost like the final phase of that chrysalis right now. So we've set that foundation. It's being forced to stretch, and that's causing us to face some vulnerabilities, okay? And what's interesting is that while we had Mars leading the way with the Sun right behind it and Venus right behind that, moving through Sagittarius, then into Capricorn. Then they kind of made their accordion and they made that conjunction. Mercury, the other personal planet, has been lagging behind because it had its retrograde in the fall, but it's been speeding up. It's sped through Sagittarius. It's now in Capricorn. And this week, right after essentially Venus, Mars, and the Sun are done squaring Chiron, we have Mercury coming in to oppose Jupiter, immediately then squaring Chiron, just like those three did. So it's following in their footsteps. It's kind of like, hey, wait up, little brother kind of character almost. And it has a message essentially for Mars, the Sun, and Venus. But now that they've done the accordion, now Venus is leading the way. The Sun is behind Venus, and Mars is the one lagging. So when Mercury does catch up, it's going to catch up to Mars first, then the Sun, then Venus. And that's something we'll talk about next week, because Mercury will actually catch up with Mars right around Saturday night into Sunday of next week. And that'll be right, a few hours before the new moon in Capricorn, which will be the big theme of next week. But building up to that new moon in Capricorn, we have these personal planets. Venus leading the way now, Sun right behind it, and Mars, and actually Mercury will pass Mars and then catch up to the Sun before Mars even gets to that point. But the aspects that this new moon will make next week, it has this energy of like the final boss. Now, I'm not a gamer myself, but I'm familiar with the idea of final boss. You move through different levels and whatnot, and then at the very end, you got to meet the final boss and beat the final boss, etc. And with Saturn and Neptune in late degrees Pisces, with Uranus in late degree Taurus, this is where this new moon is going to be aspecting. It's going to form a sextile to the Saturn and Neptune in late Pisces, and a trine to Uranus and Taurus. And so we're moving through the final stages of these endings in those themes. So we're talking about themes with Neptune going back to 2011, 2012 timeframe, okay, which have to do with like final releases, final spiritual development, etc. Saturn's been in Pisces since early 2023. So 3 years of that, essentially. So about 14 years of Neptune, 3 years of Saturn, and then about 8 years of Uranus and Taurus, okay? That goes back to the spring of 2018. So we can look at it on multiple levels, that 8-year level with Uranus and Taurus, the 3-year level with Saturn in Pisces, or the 14-year level with Neptune in Pisces, and a lot of stuff that is ready to be finished. So again, this new moon will be all about this final boss, this final passage, right before we, those outer planets start moving into their new signs. We'll have Neptune move into Aries January 26th, so that's coming up pretty soon. Saturn is going to be February 13th. It'll enter Aries, and then it'll be in late April that Uranus will enter Gemini for the final time. But this is our final battle, okay? Don't get discouraged. Don't feel like you're moving backwards, because some things will come up that are basically saying, hey, with that new foundation you formed on a personal level, what other ways can you deal with this? We've grown. We've faced a vulnerability. Did it kill us? No. If it didn't kill you, it made you stronger, right? And what this is asking us to do, essentially, is to look at things in a new way. So when that final phase is coming up here, and it'll be short-lived, because again, these outer planets are moving into their new signs very quickly. So there's nothing that's coming up that's going to be some new long-term issue or something we have to deal with, okay? It's just coming up for a realization, for us to face it and say, yeah, this has been part of my journey the last several years, going back 14 years for Neptune, again, 3 years for Saturn, 8 years for Uranus, and to say, you know what, I can see this in a new way. I've grown, I've faced the vulnerability, and I'm allowing myself to move through it, okay? And so it really is a healing and a graduation that we're going through, and we'll talk more about that new moon in Capricorn. It'll happen actually next Sunday, so it'll be perfect timing. And that's when Mercury is going to catch up with Mars, and then it'll follow up by catching up with the Sun, and then finally with Venus, and that'll be about a 10-day period starting next weekend. And what's interesting is when it catches up with Venus, so when Mercury completes its zip through the other personal planets, it'll be within hours of Neptune entering Aries on January 26th. So it all kind of wraps itself up in that way. So just remember, this week, all about allowing ourselves to expand into some vulnerability and accept this final boss phase that is on the horizon. That'll be more next week, like I said, but it's kind of sinking in as we speak, and it's nothing to fear. That's the whole point. Nothing to fear. It's understand that it's showing up. It's because we're ready to face it in a different way and finally let it go. So with that, we'll wrap it up. So if you have any questions, please let me know. If you want to look at your own chart, I do personal readings as well. We could talk about where this is all happening in your chart. It's all big transformations, but we're almost at that butterfly phase. We're almost there. Okay, we just got to get through the final boss, and then we'll be there. But again, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, enjoy your Sunday, enjoy your week, and we'll talk to you next time. See ya.